Wait. Are you saying that she was down here as me?
Maybe she still is.
Hey, I repeat myself. Where is Irving?
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and these are all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Severance Season 2, Episode 5, Trojan's Horse. So all season we've talked about the many references to Greek mythology and Heli's connection to the character of Helena of Troy and her connection to the Trojan War. Helena was essentially serving as a Trojan horse on behalf of Lumen to foil the plans of MDR and the severed employees. She was presented as the gift of Heliar to Mark and the gang, when in reality she was So there is a lot to talk about after this episode. Heliar is back, O&D is making dental equipment, Mark's reintegration sickness has arrived, and Irving B is dead? Question mark? Will he be back? Let's get into it. And hey, by the way, we have these great Praise Kier shirts up on the merch store right now, ScreenCrushMerch.com. Be sure to check them out. They're a lot of fun. So we open with the man from the exports hall that we heard mentioned earlier this season by Felicia to Irving when she found his drawings of the testing floor elevator.
We send a lot of shipments there. Used to go ourselves, but now they send a guy.
So as this guy enters optics and design with his squeaky cart, we can see on these shelves some standard office supplies like blue and pink erasers, pens, copy paper, hand sanitizer, and hand soap. We can safely assume that all of this stuff is made in-house by Lumen, by O&D. Now, as this mysterious man approaches Felicia and this young woman, who we actually saw here in season 1, they both look really uncomfortable and a little scared. And that eerie feeling is then passed on to we, the viewer, with the intention obscuration of the man's face. So they then hand over a tray of dental equipment that we can assume they 3D printed just like everything else they create in O&D, like watering hands and even hatchets.
Hatchet?
Yes, Negan, a hatchet. We saw this same woman in season 1 mention that they created hatchets.
The hatchets weren't aggressive. Shh.
So my question is what the hell do they need dental equipment for? My first thought, went back to this wall of smiles that we saw in season 1. Now, in the previous episode, I discussed my personal theory that these new uncanny twin monstrosities are 3D printed clones. While macrodata refinement is doing the great work of giving tangibility to consciousness, and the goat people are probably studying things like genetics and cloning, I think that O&D with their 3D printers that we saw in season 1, I think they are printing physical body parts. Each of these departments are a cog in a machine, and they are creating what I believe to be Lumen's own take on human life. Now, as we've discussed in previous breakdowns, Kier has a massive god complex, and there are many self-drawn parallels between him and various other deities from various mythologies. Not only do Kier and Lumen want to learn the process of artificially creating life, but they want to achieve eternal life, immortality, and they have the ultimate goal of resurrecting Kier. So all of that is to say that if they are creating physical bodies and running essentially human trials down on the testing floor, I guess it would make sense that to perfect their designs, their creations, they'd need dental equipment to work on these clone bodies' teeth. We should also mention how characters like Natalie and Helena and Milchek have these perfect smiles that are really crucial to their manipulations of other people. You could actually refer to this as a plastic smile. They use their smile to convey and extract certain emotions out of those who they're interacting with, while on the inside they are not feeling the tempers that would elicit a true smile. It's all part of their manipulations. This is best represented with characters like Natalie, who are clearly feeling great pain and fear on the inside, but they hide that behind a deceptive smile. So over with Mark at his house, we see him taking these medications and drinking this white, milky looking substance to help him process his reintegration sickness.
I feel like I just got reintegrated.
What's wrong with you? You were just reintegrated?
Well, I just got back from a New Year's party.
Dude, it's February.
It was a really good party, and now I feel awful.
Man, I have been there. This year, I wanted to really hit my New Year's resolution hard and go to the gym, but it's hard to do anything when you're having a rough morning after a night of drinking. But I drank some last night and I feel fine.
Did you tame thy tempers?
No, I took a Z-Biotic. They're the sponsor of this video. Guys, Z-Biotics pre-alcohol is one of my all-time favorite sponsors to work with. Before I have a big night out, I pass these around like party favors.
Well, what is it?
Z-Biotics pre-alcohol is the world's world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. You see, when you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. But of course, remember to drink this probiotic before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Anytime I ever go out, I always take a ZBiotics pre-alcohol. I want to be able to have a good time and work out the next day instead of being stuck on the couch.
Oh, I feel like I'm stuck in a couch.
So I highly recommend that you stock up on ZBiotics pre-alcohol by going to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush. You can also scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use ScreenCrush at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code. Believe me, you'll want to stock up. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund you your money, no questions asked. Just click that link below and you will not regret it. Now, back to Severance. So Mark is on the phone with his sister Devon, and we learn that he is keeping her in the dark about his work with Ragabi, likely because he is terrified that if he lets Devon be involved, that Lumen will take her from him just like they did his wife. Mark's already had a close run-in with this when Miss Cobell infiltrated his life and pretended to be a lactation consultant and infiltrated Devon and Rickon's life and the life of their newborn baby. So Mark says,
Man, he fell off a rope, apparently.
Now, this could be a reference back to the first episode of this season when one of the new refiners said that they didn't have an elevator at his old office, but instead a rope.
Did you have an elevator?
We had, how do you say, a rope.
Now, I would think Mark knows that he was outside the last time he went to work because he and the others woke up outside. We saw Irving wake up on the ice, and for a brief moment in that episode, this was his outie, meaning that Mark's outie was out there as well. He made the trek to wherever this was happening. And I've personally theorized that they weren't actually all that far from Lumen because we can see snowy mountains around the Lumen building. So I would think that Mark would be aware that he was on the outside for an outing, but again, he's keeping Devon in the dark and not offering much of any details because he wants to protect her, protect Rickon, and protect their baby. Now, speaking of those snowy mountains, we actually do get a great shot of them here in the conference room. Again, I think that they were likely really close to home, close to the office. I mean, we even saw Milchek use a walkie-talkie to tell them to turn off the Glasgow block, and if it's a walkie-talkie, that likely means they're near the headquarters and that the person was down in the security office that was flipping that switch, so I would assume they had to be nearby. Now, when Helena enters the conference room and sits down, we can see her upside down reflection in the table, mirroring her innie self, Helly, looking up at her from the severed floor below. Mr. Drummond says,
The medical team says your tempers will rebalance quickly.
Now remember, Drummond has a frolic tattoo, one of the 4 tempers on his hand. Now, Drummond seems to be one of the guys who are fully bought into the cult of Kier, similar to that of Miss Cobell. Drummond then suggests an obligement session, which is likely similar to a wellness session like we've seen on the severed floor in season 1 with Miss Casey. So we do hear Helena keep referring to James Egan, Lumen CEO, as father, which is to be expected, he's her father. But we then hear Drummond also refer to him as father, not your father, but father.
Father encouraged it.
So I'm wondering if he is also a child of James Egan and he himself an Egan. And if that's the case, perhaps he is a younger sibling of Helena, which is why he isn't in line to become CEO. But it's also possible that he just considers himself a child of Kier, and he has essentially been adopted into the cult of Kier, and he refers to whoever the Lumen CEO is, whoever the current Egan is, as father, or maybe we'll even hear him call Helena mother, I don't know. So Drummond then says,
And the work is mysterious and important.
Which is a direct callback to Mark saying the same line to Helly in season 1.
The work is mysterious and important.
So when Helly says,
The animals.
we're reminded of her disdain for the innies. She showed great disdain for her own innie in season 1.
I am a person. You are not.
And earlier this season, when she was still pretending to be Helly, she slipped for a moment and had this outburst moment as Helena.
We're not the same, actually. Us and the Audis, we're not. And speaking for myself, I don't think we owe them shit.
At the time, that could have been viewed as Helly having an outburst about not being her outie because of knowledge that she's an Egan. But we now have confirmation that this was Helena, and the reason that she said this is, I think, because she has a disdain and a sense of jealousy for her innie. She also appears to have maybe had a bit of a moral quandary with the way that they are treated. But to combat that, she tells herself over and over that the innies aren't people. She even calls them animals. And this is what helps her sleep at night when she knows that what they're doing is essentially human slave labor. Now, Helena calling them animals and robbing them of their humanity also echoes Miss Wong later in the episode when she says,
"You shouldn't let them have a funeral. It makes them feel like people."
So this indicates, I think, that Miss Wong, like Milchek, likely isn't a Severed employee, and she may even be a Lumen creation. Some have even theorized that she is a clone of Miss Casey. We've theorized, over and over that what they are doing is cloning and that they are trying to recreate Kier, and in this intro for this season, we actually see a baby crawling with a Kier head, perhaps insinuating that one of the methods they're trying is growing a clone from the infant state to adulthood. Now, Helly's disdain for the innies and her viewing them as non-human really cements her as a great villain for the series overall. So when Helly enters the Severed floor for the first time this season, we see her touch down with clenched fists, and she is understandably angry for Helena's deceptions. Mr. Milchek says,
"In ancient times, the king of Sweden himself was known to go incognito amongst his people in the hopes of learning their true grievances."
This comparison of Helena and Kier to the King of Sweden echoes back to the many kings throughout history, such as the rulers of Rome, who used the will of the gods to justify any self-serving decision that they made.
The gods have rendered their judgment.
We talked about in previous episodes how Kier has a serious god complex, and how he is serving in both the role of a dictatorial king, but he has also positioned himself as a deity to be praised. In this episode, we even see them pray to Kier. Now, Kier views himself as a creator of life, and as we theorized last week, that's exactly what they're doing at Lumen, creating synthetic artificial life on a quest for immortality. So I just want to say, I absolutely loved Britt Lauer's performance here, showing the hurt in Helly for Helena pretending to be her. Helly was already struggling with the fact that she shares a body with this cruel, evil person, but now that same person not only robbed her of her body,
by stealing my fucking body,
she robbed her of her identity.
She doesn't have the right to take my identity.
So they go on to talk about the status of Irving B, assuming their friend is dead. Milchek says,
"Irving B's outie has departed on an elongated cruise voyage."
And I loved Dylan's response.
I don't give 3 dry about his outie.
Dylan's disdain for outies mirrors that of Helena's disdain for innies, and this is also a great moment to realize the fact that Irving B, he is essentially dead by Milchek's hand. Sure, he could be brought back, but it's now at the full discretion of Lumen on whether or not Irving B is able to return. Until then, he will remain in this eternal darkness, this limbo, if you will, which kind of ties into my theory I've been working on this whole season of how the Severed floor and the floors below are connected to the 9 circles of hell, one of which is actually limbo. So I also wanted to point out something that I actually missed in a previous episode, and that is this iceberg painting in Milchek's office that I did miss earlier in the season, but I really want to talk about it. So,
all right, let's get cooking.
Icebergs, they essentially represent the discovery of truth. Going back to that impression, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And that is the situation we have found ourselves in with this series. The innies have barely scratched the surface on their mission to discover the true horrors and secrets of the corrupt company and cult that is Kier and Lumen. And what's ironic is that this exterior shot of the Lumen building is also just the tip of the iceberg. We know that down below the surface level is where the secrets lie. Not only are the innies on the Severed floor part of that iceberg beneath the waterline, but there are other floors that go even deeper, like the testing floor. We know this place goes deeper and deeper, and even a below surface floor like the Severed floor is still just at the top of that really big iceberg below. Not only like physically there are more floors below, but the secrets just get deeper and deeper, and the discovery of what is truly going on at Lumen, you have to dive deeper and deeper deeper to find that truth. And this ties into something called iceberg theory, which is actually a writing style pioneered by Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway was of the opinion that the deeper elements of a story shouldn't be super obvious and they should instead be implicit, which is exactly the style of storytelling that we've seen in this series. So here you'll see that they photoshopped Irving out of this picture, likely using Lumen AI technology to achieve this removal. Or I don't know, hey, maybe my innie goes down there and does the graphic design for them, I don't know. But this was all reminiscent of when they moved quickly to change out the desk photos in season 1, and it was reminiscent of them using image manipulation to show the Audis in a convertible at a parade, similar to this image of JFK. So I also wanted to point out how this wide angle shot of the office gives the impression that they are being surveilled, like perhaps literally by a hidden camera, which we know they have all throughout the severed floor. Now, when Helly follows Mark into the bathroom, we have this shot that I mentioned earlier showing her reflection again, and we're seeing this in the midst of a conversation about Helena. This reflection of Helly is meant to symbolize this duality between the two. Mark is being really shitty to Helly, and I mean, I guess I kind of get it. He was taken advantage of in that previous episode. That's got to be really difficult for him, and he has a right to be mad, but not at Helly. But when you're mad, it's common to take that frustration out on the wrong people, the people closest to you. So I get it, but I do think that what we're also seeing here is Mark's merging of his two selves. Mark S has always been like this chipper guy, while Mark Scout has always been a bit of a depressed, quippy smartass. And hey, no disrespect to depressed, quippy smartasses. I am one myself at times. And it is understandable why Mark's Audi is the way he is. He's angry and he's still in mourning. And now those emotions of Mark Scout are slowly but surely merging with Mark S. We are seeing the merging of his two selves into one. We also see later in the episode, toward the end actually, when Mark has this exchange with Milchick, that he seems very Mark Scout, not Mark S.
Putting the numbers in the thing.
Refining.
Right?
Yes.
Whatever you say, Mr. Milchick. Praise Kier.
And while we're talking about all this, I want to answer a question that I've heard a few viewers ask. Does reintegration essentially kill the innie? So we know that when an innie, like Irving, is terminated, that's essentially a death warrant for their innie. They cease to exist. But reintegration, it's different. We aren't seeing the Audi like overtake the innie and become the present consciousness on the severed floor. We're seeing the two sides of the coin that make up this whole person come together. Mark S, the innie, he's still there. He's not going anywhere, but he is gaining the memories of his Audi, and his Audi is gaining the memories of his innie. They are becoming one. Think of it like when you're having a dream, and in that dream, everything seems super real, but then when you wake up, you realize, oh, that was a dream. It's not a big deal. I think that's the type of feeling that both sides, the innie and the Audi, would feel. They slowly begin to remember their respective lives as just one. Similar to how someone who maybe was suffering from memory loss then regains their memories over time, and it's like those memories never left. So no, Mark S isn't going anywhere. He's just combining with his Audi self. And we also have to remember this. They are the same person. There's a great interview actually with Adam Scott detailing his conversations with Ben Stiller and the creators of the show, and how an innie and an Audi really are one. They just have a block that prevents them from feeling as one. And that block, of course, is that severance chip. And what the reintegration process essentially does is it tears down that barrier. So then we jump over to Irving's funeral. We hear mention of a retirement party.
Normally when an innie goes to be with Kier, we hold a retirement party.
Remember, we saw Bert's retirement party in season 1 when Irving actually showed up and revealed it for what it was, a funeral.
You're all just gonna stand here and let him die?
Now, here in the break room, we see the return of these inspirational office posters, including this one with Dylan from the season 1 finale that reads, "Hang in there," which is actually what Irving said to Dylan just before his termination in the previous episode.
Hang in there!
Now, I think that maybe this could be a hint from Irving for a greater plan being in the works, perhaps one that would include Dylan needing to once again enact the overtime contingency. And as we'll later find out, Irving tucked a secret note behind this poster for Dylan to find. So the team is presented with a watermelon carved to look like Irving's head. That's not creepy at all. And you'll notice that the piece Dylan is eating is Irving's ear, echoing back to this line in the previous episode when Dylan said, "I should have listened!" So this symbolizes how Dylan is now ready to listen, and he's likely going to be on a path to avenge his late friend Irving. So earlier in the season, when Milchek received this creepy series of paintings with Kier essentially in blackface, we talked about how physically uncomfortable he seemed when receiving these images. Rightfully so. And you could also tell in that scene how uncomfortable Natalie was presenting him with this gift from the board. So I was really pleased to see that in this episode, they actually had Milchek bring this up with Natalie and ask her, as a fellow person of color, how she felt about the paintings.
I was just wondering if you could share with me a little how you felt when you received the paintings.
Now, here on Mark's computer, we can see a series of files in the form of a digital Rolodex. We see the words Yakima, Allentown, Astoria, Bellingham, Cairns, Chicxulub, Silo, and of course, Cold Harbor. Now, most of these seem to be in reference to various locations and maybe even battles from world history like Cold Harbor, which of course connects to Mark's time as a history professor. But two of these really stuck out to me. Chicxulub, that is the impact crater from the asteroid that is widely accepted as what killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Chicxulub also roughly translates from the Mayan word for tail of the devil, which of course plays into the themes of hell associated with the severed floor, and of course Kier, the devil that I think is on the very, very bottom floor. But there's also Cielo, which translates from Spanish to mean sky or heaven.
How's the sky?
I don't know.
So Mr. Drummond goes on to say,
Mark Scout's completion of Cold Harbor will be remembered as one of the greatest moments in the history of this planet.
And man, was that eerie, and it gives us just a taste at how global this company and their mission truly is. There is something dark cooking at Lumen, and they intend to have a global impact similar to likely that of the asteroid, perhaps even an extinction of sorts. Or perhaps they are tying Lumen and Cold Harbor back to its eugenic roots, and there could be a plan to essentially replace mankind with Lumen's synthetic creations that are made in the image of Kier. So Milchek's poor performance review results in him saying this to Mark.
Did you tell her that you fucked her outie at the Orpo?
Which, I mean, yeah, he should probably tell Helly what happened. She has the right to know. So then we jump over to Rickon, who, remember, has been recruited by Natalie on behalf of Lumen to write a version of his book, but for the innies down on the severed floor. And Devin sees this whole situation for what it is: propaganda.
And if you want to water down your work so they can use it for propaganda, then you're hurting people too.
Rickon, however, is allowing his own obsession with becoming a successful published author to derail his better judgment, but he claims that it could be...
It's a Trojan's horse.
He said it! He said it! So we then get the return of Irving, kinda. It's Irving's Audi, which, you know, that works for me. I do hope to see his innie again soon, but love the Audi as well. He has returned to this phone booth, reminding us that his Audi is also connected to some outside organization looking to bring down Lumen. And it becomes pretty clear that what he was using his paintings for of that elevator, it was to try to get a message to his innie. And that's, of course, very likely why Irving B was having those visions of the black slime coming down on his desk. That message was breaking through. Now, while in the phone booth, he sees Bert watching him just like he was earlier in the season. So, back with Mark, he asks a few questions to Ragabi about Gemma, but in my opinion, not nearly enough. I'd have like a million questions after learning that my wife was alive. But anyway, one explanation that we got is that Lumen knows people at the morgue, which could explain how they faked her death, but I'm starting to wonder if they didn't fake her death, and I think it's actually possible that Miss Casey could be like a really advanced version of one of these things that we saw last week. A version that was created based off her dead body and genetic coding, and Mark, having been so close to her, I mean, they were married, his work in MDR could be filling in missing pieces of her mind to make her more human. But hey, that's just a theory. I cannot wait to find out what the hell is actually going on. And then we end the episode, of course, with Mark experiencing reintegration, and we can hear echoes of Miss Casey's wellness session with Mark from season 1.
Your Audi pays all of his gas and electric bills within 3 business days.
And then the two come face to face for the first time. Well, the first time for Mark Scout since she died. And guys, I love how every episode of this show gives you just enough to be satisfied, but also leaves you longing for more. Shows that can accomplish that are few and far between. So they're doing it really well. Loving the show. That's our breakdown for this week's episode of Severance Season 2. Let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below, as well as your theories. And you can also feel free to @ me on Twitter. You can find me on our Discord, link in the description below. And I always like to encourage you to yell out the window. Maybe I'll hear you. If you're new here, please do feel free to subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.